You know nothing about the real world.
What is the real world? What does it mean to live in the real world? To be in touch with reality. When you go online, you can see literally thousands of videos, posts, comments of people telling others that they don't live in the real world, or they are out of touch with reality. When you go on YouTube, there are hundreds of videos about people being out of touch. The celebrities, how they are out of touch with reality, with the real world, like how they don't live in the real world. It makes me wonder what makes our world the real world. What makes us the in touch with reality? Because let's be honest, when you start actually thinking about these divisions and how we judge others, it's not just about the status, the money, because you're gonna have someone like Joe Rogan, and then you're gonna have Taylor Swift or Kim Kardashian or whoever else, and you're gonna say that this person is in touch with reality, lives in the real world because he's humble and not flashy, and the other person is out of touch. And it shows us that the only distinction between them is how they live their life, which brings us to another conclusion, that we judge others not because they're rich or famous and they live in the bubble or something like that. And it's not just about the bubble, it's about which bubble we think the celebrity lives in, which makes me think that for some of them, for celebrity, and not just the celebrity, for anyone basically, to be called out of touch is just whether or not the ideas, way of living, value system align with your own. And I get that you can make the argument that the real world, the real experience, being in touch with reality is what the majority of people experience, and that's the real world. I understand that sentiment, however, I question if that's the case, because it takes out the individuality of life, because there might be similarities, but we different from one another so much. And just because we have these differences, it shouldn't determine our right to live in the real world, or to be judged like that. I want to make something clear. I'm using celebrities or the elites, rich people, just as an example of a bigger phenomena, because it's not just about them. They're just like any other people in this context, like everyone else in this conversation. I'm talking about human nature, about human ideas, about reality, the real world, and our perception of it. Well, it seems that the distinction is just based on whether someone shares your values and ideas, like I said previously. But let's not act like there's one way of living a good life. And when you start acting like there's one way and only people living in the real world know how to live the good way, it brings me back to this example of Plato's cave, before the experiment, showing where you have a group of people that only ever see the shadow of the outside world, and that's all they know, and they think that this is all that is. That's the reality. And then when you say that there is one way to live good life and only the people in the real world know it, you're putting yourself outside. And well, the question always is and will be, which one are you? And how can you tell that you're not the one always in the cave, only seeing the shadow? This is a much bigger sentiment, actually. A sentiment shared not just in philosophy but in every single religion that seems to be based on two principles, either of there being something more, either we're talking about a different realm, a true real world like heaven, Valhalla, Olympus, some other true world that you can go after this one, after this life. And then the second seems to be about some true state of consciousness, something more real within yourself. Then we're talking about the circle of reincarnations, reaching the nirvana, escaping the circle of life, which seems to be the punishment, like a trail run, right? And it reveals something truly interesting about human psychology, because you can see a clear pattern with all of these ideas, that this wish, this desire, not necessarily for there to be more, but for this to not be all that is. And it's interesting perspective when you look at it. Another way of showing how much we are scared of the finite life, because when you look at it, it's clear as day that it's just another example of our fear from mortality and the fact that we are gonna be gone one day. And it's not just ancient texts, ancient like religions or philosophy, because we have the same idea in pop culture right now. Since the invention of computers and games, simulations, you know where I'm going with it. The idea of the Matrix, the idea of this is just a huge simulation, an illusion, really. The simulation, the Matrix, is just another reincarnation of the same idea of the Platoscape. It's the same thing. And it's then when you look at psychology and science, it reinforces this idea of illusion. When you look at what psychology tells us about cognitive errors, different biases that we have that shape our perception of reality, our background, how then you can talk about mental illnesses, how that affects your perception of reality, different chemical substances, right? Psychoactive substances that change, drugs, alcohol, caffeine, and how they affect your brain chemistry, your brain activity, how that changes how you see, how you feel things, how you perceive reality, all of that. And then you look at different mental illnesses and hallucinations, and it makes you really just question whether or not anything is real, if any of us know anything about the real world. Or is it like Ricky said, you know nothing about the real world? Your research in neuroscience points toward the answer that all of this is illusion. Everything we see, or to be more specific, a prediction, since when studying brain activity. Even if it's unrecognizable by us, the perception, the information that we receive from the environment, from the outside world, it needs to be processed by the brain for us to shape everything we see, feel, touch, all of this. And then, only then, you can have the image of the outside world in your brain, and it is all by default in the past. So everything you know, everything you see, it already happened, or you can say that it's just a prediction. I think now we arrive in a different place, a different conversation, because you see, you are your brain. So even if this is a prediction, it's not like you can choose to not believe it. It's not like you can somehow accept the fact that it's an illusion or simulation, like some people would like to think. You may think that there are two options, right? You choose the blue pill, live in illusion, think that everything is an illusion, blah blah blah, simulation or whatever the reincarnation of the same idea is for there to be something more. But when you actually accept this, you reach a point where you have to remember everything, including you, will be an illusion. And if that's the case, and there is a world, anything, something more out there, and you're not real, then it brings you to what one of the characters in Inception, the movie, to the same point that none of this is real, and I don't think you can continue on living if you truly accept that, or you accept the fact that this is all real, including you. Now you may think that you have this choice, these two options, these two roads to choose from, but I don't think that's the case, because when you truly accept the fact that everything is an illusion, including you, then you cannot truly feel the peace, happiness, and joy of this life. Maybe it's time to accept that you're real. So when you accept that you're real and your world is the real one, I'm not talking about this idea that you're the only one conscious and the rest are just NPCs, that the same principle applies to others. The same way your world is the real one. We can have different real worlds interacting with each other and exchanges ideas, values, philosophies to try to navigate this life. Maybe it's time to accept that you're real. And in this new 2025, maybe you can just, I hope that you can take whatever the bloody pill you want, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, take a breath and be able to just enjoy it. Enjoy the realness of clouds in the sky, the grass, green grass on the earth, the leaves on the tree, the sounds of the outside world, the snow in the winter, the warm rain in the summer, stars in the night, a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you like to drink. Just be able to enjoy it. And perhaps I hope that you can, because I think that it's time for us to stop dreaming and start living, and maybe then we will know something about the real world.